Thanks for joining me today for episode 82 of Think Big with Michael Zellner. All positive, no politics. My guest today is Mckrell Baier. Mckrell is the co-owner, along with her husband Christian, of Southern Blues Equestrian Center in Collierville, Tennessee. She graduated from the University of Miami in 1999 with a BS in biology and anthropology. Mckrell is also the program director for the nonprofit program BridgeUp, GiddyUp, and I'm excited for her to share with us today all the wonderful things that they are doing. Mckrell, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Tell us something interesting about yourself most people don't know.
I don't know if most people don't know this, but I think it's an interesting fact, and it sounds creepy, but it's not. I'm a collector of humans.
Okay.
So that is sort of, I don't have a lot of time for hobbies in my life because my life with horses is so all encompassing. So anytime that I get to go out into the real world, which is not my farm, my hobby is sort of getting to know people very quickly and very authentically. And it's really what allows me to do my work.
You know, you grew up in Memphis, and I believe you graduated from Lausanne Collegiate School. Are there a few teachers who you remember from your childhood who had a big impact on your life?
Absolutely. The first one is just recently retired. I believe she retired from Germantown High School long after she left Lausanne. Melinda Keller was my life sciences teacher in sixth grade, and she absolutely opened the world of biological sciences to me and completely changed the trajectory of my life from not just loving being outside, loving animals, loving nature, but wanting to understand how it all works.
Anybody else? Do you think
Oh
any
yeah.
coaches
So
or
all,
anything?
all of my coaches, I was going to say Coach Waters, Coach Brandenburg, Coach Singleton. I have all of the coaches that I ever was lucky enough to work with, either in PE or basketball, had a huge impact on my wanting to learn how to help people. Maybe not just in sport, but how to help people grow and develop. And all those coaches played a role.
Yeah, I can remember a few teachers from high school at Ridgeway that had a big impact. My biggest one was a gentleman named Harry Rainey. My sister he was my AP English teacher my senior year. My sister had him 2 years before. And I was really lucky and fortunate. My sister was an excellent student, took really good notes, and she kept them all. So when I took him 2 years later, I had all her notes, and that really helped me a lot when I took that class. But it was just, he had the most influence on my life, and I remember a lot of the great lessons today. So it's really good to have those memories.
Absolutely.
You know, you graduated from University of Miami in just 3.5 years, and you were the first professional equestrian to be inducted to the University of Miami chapter of Phi Beta Kappa Society. Obviously, you worked extremely hard to do that. How were you able to balance school and competing as an equestrian?
With a lot of careful scheduling. So every fall semester, I took a more than full load, like 21 or 23 hours wasn't unusual for me. And then in the spring semester, I had to take slightly less, usually 18 or maybe 15, so that I could have all Fridays off to be able to drive up to Palm Beach, Florida to work for my trainer and compete on the weekends to sort of hone my craft.
Slightly less 18 or 15. Are you kidding? Like I remember going to Memphis and 12 or 15 was like, all right, this is a lot because I did a little bit too much, partying outside of classes and everything. But wow, that's just amazing to be able to take, 15, 18, 21 hours in a semester and still do what you were doing.
It was just necessary, but I also got sort of addicted to learning in college because there were so many courses and opportunities to study things that you just don't get in high school, right? So I would look at the course catalog for the upcoming semester and think, I want to take all of these. And then I would have to pick some. And it was just, I have continued to be a lifelong student, and I'm totally addicted to learning. So for me, it was hard, but it was fun, and it was really inspiring to have all of those college professors too were extremely influential on my life. Specifically, the professor that I had first for introduction to physical anthropology. I never had any inclination to be an anthropology major, but sitting and listening to her very first lecture, she became a lifelong mentor to me, and we still communicate almost weekly.
You know, you won several different awards and championships in your career, including multiple Grand Prix show jumping placings between '96 and 2003. and you were also the Legacy Cup Hunter winner in 2008. What was it like for you to be that good and do what you do and compete nationally in the sport?
Well, I never felt like I was very good. That was probably what has driven me to continue to do the work that I do today, and to try to always be the best rider and equestrian that I can. Having wins like that was really, really thrilling. But over the course of my entire career, I've probably had a lot less wins than I would have liked, you know. So those highlights are things that you definitely remember, but they're nothing that you can hang your laurels on, you know. Even having an Olympic medal is not enough if you don't continue to try to be better. So I think maybe not being as good as I hoped I was or was at any given time always keeps driving me to be better.
Did having that mindset of, always wanting to improve, did it help keep you grounded to where you could continue to learn?
Oh, I've never had any trouble keeping grounded. I think the opposite of that, having confidence and not having self doubt, is the thing that I struggle with more than anything daily still.
Since January of 2000, you've coached students all across the United States. You've shown winning hunters and Grand Prix horses as a professional horseman. I know you obviously must have really enjoyed competing, as we just talked about, but what feeling do you get from teaching others to be a great equestrian like you?
uh, Way more fulfillment than the competition. I miss competition. I haven't been in regular competition in a number of years because it is a sport that does not remain accessible to many. From an economic standpoint, it's really beyond the reach of all but the top 1%. So the fact that I really had to give up competing myself in order to pursue a more business model for my work. Um, I miss the competition terribly, or I miss that thrill of sport. Let's put it that way. But teaching others to do this thing that's really driven me my whole life is um, beyond what I could have ever imagined. Even the greatest win on a horse show could be like, it's like that every single day.
You said, quote, what's inherently good and bad about competition. And I think that the good in it must be that sometimes you just have to foul until you figured out a more elegant solution. And then once you do, you become a better coach because it's just the greatest job that there is. Know when to plant your feet, unquote. I believe you were referring to what you called your mediocre basketball career, Mckrell, where
Correct.
you said you fouled out more than anyone on the team. What,
For sure.
what did basketball and that competition in general mean to you?
So basketball as a sport is very, very different from any of the horse sports. Maybe polo would be an exception to that, right? So most horse sports are really about harmony and finesse and partnership with this other creature that doesn't share the same communication as you do. Basketball is much more grit and grind, as we know here in Memphis.
Right.
And so it really gave me a sporting opportunity that filled in the gaps of what horses don't in sport with horses don't inherently have. So I think that being short and kind of slow, but having a really like bulldog sort of personality, which I still do today in all things, it was good for me and to enter in a sport. I didn't even begin to play until I played around a little bit in fifth grade. So a lot of kids were way ahead of me. A lot had way more talent. But being a part of a team like that and working in a sport that I definitely didn't have a lot of talent for, it taught me that you can get good with fundamental practice skills. And I became one of the best shooters on my team and the best 3-point shooter, and also known for defensive doggedness. So it was an incredibly powerful thing in my life to get that experience.
We both grew up here in Memphis, and I had a really good basketball player used to play at Memphis State. It's a point guard named Otis Jackson. He was a point guard before Andre Turner, who we know, and I had Andre Turner on. Both of them been on my show, which I've been really excited and honored to share those memories with them. But my senior year in high school, Otis taught the intramural team at the Memphis Jewish Community Center, and I was on the team. And it wasn't because I was good; it's because everybody made the team. But I never played. But then after the season, I asked him. I said, "Hey, will you teach me how to play? I really want to learn." And so I took basketball lessons from him that summer, and I became a really good set shooter. And I couldn't do everything else great. I was just mediocre, but if I was open, I would hit the shot many of the times and everything. And he and I actually had a free throw competition. I remember it was like one of my last lessons, and reality, I hit 88 out of 100 and beat
I
him.
believe it. Yeah.
And it was just exciting. But I became, that was me, like you. I mean, you were probably a good 3-point shooter, and you could do it with someone in your face. I could only do it as a set shooter, but those were great, fun competition times.
Absolutely. And it's a great way for me, basketball has been a way to connect to community in Memphis that I wouldn't maybe otherwise have had if I was only a horse person, right? So basketball is so universal. And when I went to University of Miami, there was a half a minute when I thought about maybe trying to walk on the women's team. And in reality, it wasn't going to work with my schedule, and I probably wouldn't have made it anyway. But I enjoyed intramurals and just playing around, pickup games at the gym with the guys was really fun for me because I didn't always have an easy time fitting in with girls. So having that sport outlet, something to do for fun, besides having to drive 90 minutes to where I worked with my horses, gave me social outlet too.
The Urban Equestrian Program, it serves the Whitehaven Community Center that has over 200 children between the ages of 6 and 16. In 2013, all by yourself, you produced fundraising events that started the entire program for those kids. That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about more about that, and what gave the idea for you to start it?
It's a very strange story. So in 2009, my husband, I imported him from Europe. He is a Swede by birth, but he's German by citizenship. And he had a really long, very traditional upbringing with horses in a traditional riding school setting, which I didn't have. It's just not been a part of the history in the United States as long as it has been in Europe. So when he moved here, it really became obvious to me that I had a whole lot of gaps to fill in my education if I wanted to be a good riding teacher. And because that was really humbling, and it definitely wasn't coming from him or anything that he said, it was just coming from within me because I like to be good at things. I figured that I needed a project that would help me feel like I was really good at something while I was filling in all these gaps that I knew was going to take me years to do. So I initially, my husband and I were having a conversation about how he used to, when he worked for several years in Bermuda, produce, we call them quadrille performances. They're with a number of students and riders on horses coordinated to music, which do a choreographed presentation. And he being Swedish and thinking that all good things come out of Sweden, even music. And I was like, hello, we're from Memphis. We have to talk about this.
Right.
He had coordinated several quadrille performances to the music of ABBA. And I was like, well, let me tell you about how cool that would be if we could do that with the music of Memphis, like gospel and rock and roll, soul, funk, and blues, all these things. And so when we started thinking about that would be a great way for our students that we had at the time to have something to work toward without having to only be able to go to horse shows for a goal, because it was really out of the reach of a lot of our clients that we already had. Right. I thought, if we're going to go to all this effort and produce something that's going to take a lot of time and resources to do, let's make it benefit something, right? And so I decided, of course, Whitehaven is a community that's always been very near and dear to my heart because of my own family story. I thought, well, let me see what children's charities there are in Whitehaven, and maybe we could just do this performance and benefit a charity that already exists. And then I saw that there were very few children's related charities that were easy for me to find. I maybe didn't do enough digging, but it gave me the idea to find out what was happening at the Whitehaven Community Center, because that was the only thing that popped up on my radar. And I called up the director of the community center one Saturday and said, hey, what do you think about having some access to horses and riding lessons for your kids there? And he goes, we'll do anything to make that happen. Come on over, let's talk about it. And that's how the idea was born. And then we had to somehow figure out how in the world we were going to do it. And that's where our fundraising efforts came in, and they all focused around Memphis music and performance and at the farm, at the Peabody. And we had a hell of a good time doing it.
Quote, Happiness is a pony. Let us never forget as we grow older. Let us remain as wise as the child and as wise as the pony that takes care of her for nothing more than love. Unquote. That's something really special that you posted. What does that mean to you? And how has a pony given you so much happiness in your life?
So I grew up in Midtown Memphis, right across the street from Crump Stadium. Um, Midtown Memphis is a beautiful area. There's, of course, blighted parts as well. And having access to the countryside and being able to be in the countryside and interact with big animals in the countryside completely filled a part of my childhood experience that wouldn't have been possible in Midtown. It just would not have been possible there. So, knowing the first pony that I ever rode, Dapple Apple, at my trainer Claudia's farm, and the string of ponies that I was lucky enough to have as my own personal animals, Saltwater Taffy and Farnley Crystal Image and Newsreel and Shenandoah Gladstone. It's really hard to put into words. I suppose now as an adult, when you look back at it and you think in more sophisticated terms, that there's probably really a very true spiritual connection that is made with those animals that you don't get with your childhood friends or your family. So it just elevates your whole life experience. And that's really easy to lose sight of when things start to get very serious for competition. Because as we know, and I talk a lot about, because I had the revelation fairly recently that sports are really about honing our survival skills as humans, right? That's really what they're there for. Art is there to enrich our lives. And if you don't carefully balance sport with art in your personality or in your life, you very quickly can get a little bit too aggressive about things because it's hitting all of those things which help to keep us alive.
Right.
Those are very serious, very deep rooted parts of our personalities and what drives us. So if you can remember the love and that spiritual connection, all the warm fuzzies that are really impossible to explain, when you first have access to a pony as a child, and you can try to remember that through your life, whether that's in horse sport competition, any kind of sport or business or something that's competitive in nature, it helps you remember how to collaborate and cooperate too.
You said, quote, the most often overlooked aspect in a horse's training is suppleness and relaxation. Suppleness and relaxation. Overlooking the importance of this very basic work has the potential to cause extensive damage to both your horse's engine, his body, and his control panel, his mind. Tell us a little bit more about what that means.
So in the art that we train in, which is called dressage, it's a French word that literally just means training. That's all that it is. It's not a discipline that you compete in the Olympics. It has become that, but that's not the goal. The goal of dressage is to create a partner in a horse, which really isn't built to be ridden at all, to create a partner that's happy and healthy for as long as possibly can be in their lifetime. And if you skip that part of suppling means stretching, right? But it also means being willing and being flexible and really being comfortable. And that's what we miss out a lot in, not just in horse training, because it's, you can't force anything to be relaxed. You can't force anything to be calm. You can force a lot of things in life, but those can't be done. And with horses, and when you try to work with them to the highest level that you can and do very difficult things with them, unless they're supple, flexible, willing, and contented, calm, you're not going to get there. And if you do, it's going to be through fast track, shortcut things that only cause more damage than good. And at the end of the day, that's why our horses in sport today, with people having lost the interest to, not all, but many people having lost the interest and the inclination to enjoy the journey with the horse and just want to get to the thing or to the event or the competition or the prize. In essence, we've really, really damaged the horses' bodies. And that's, my husband just returned from a very important conference about welfare in equine sport. And it is absolutely critical for the future of the sport that we all open our eyes to these things and make sure that we're doing our part, because it's a very possible thing that in the near future, horse sport will be disallowed for lack of having a social license to operate.
Wow. And no one ever really thinks about anything like that. Just like you said, people on the outside of the, horse and equestrian only see the competitions like the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness and things like that. They don't see everything that goes on most of the time in the background.
Absolutely. And horse racing, is really a world unto itself that has come under the same sort of fire. And to be honest, rightly so, that what we call the sport horse world, dressage, show jumping, show hunters, 3-day eventing, to a certain extent, Western riding, well, to a large extent, Western riding. Um, the racehorse world is more obvious to the outside world because of course it has that betting aspect, and there's a large economic impact of the industry. But it's not been a good thing for their industry, but it has been a good thing for the equine industry overall long term, to have the lights shone on the things that are not ethical and not sustainable for the future.
You posted this quote by Kurt Carr. It said, quote, "We should always be grateful because there's always someone worse off than us who would love to be in our shoes," unquote. We often complain about the small things, but we have a roof over our head, food on the table, and people that love us and care about us. And there's so many people out there that don't have any of those things. Being grateful is everything, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And like I said before, I'm a scientist at heart. And what's so interesting about what science is actually able to read and track now is that these attitudes of gratefulness and giving are absolutely important to our mental and therefore physical health. So the chemicals that circulate through your body when you take time to be grateful and practice gratitude and make sure that you're seeing the positives that are out there, they have a physical impact on our body, just the same way that we know stress creates negative impacts in our body. Gratefulness heals. It is a necessary fact. And when you think about how survival works, if you're not grateful for the new day, you're not going to do very well in it, and your survival is going to be less. So it has a huge part in the kind of beings that we are.
And being positive, being grateful, and putting out good into the world, is so important. Instead of like people that always complain and this and that, and I've really realized over the last several years, especially of going through some difficult times myself, that when I put the positive out there, when I was vulnerable, when I put out there the truth, and this is some of my struggles, good came back to me.
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you for certain that during the pandemic, when none of us knew how things were going to go, whether our loved ones were going to be okay, whether we were going to, our small cell phone businesses were going to be able to continue. There were so many unknowns that it almost just forced our hand to go, you know what? I guess in this, extra little bit of time we've been given sitting here on the horse farm, not having to run around and do all the craziness that's our normal life, I guess we'll sit down and have a cup of coffee and enjoy the day, because we don't even know what the next one will bring. And that is absolutely when the good started to pour into my life. When I gave up, I refused to continue to worry.
Very good. That's awesome. That's so true. To follow that up, you said, quote, "Greatness begins with gratitude. Being gracious to the horses for their generosity is often lost in sport, but not here, not ever," unquote. I think that most people, probably never think about that point with horses of being, so very generous to people. Do they?
No, it's really amazing that, I mean, everything, I'm just going to step back for just a moment. So before we talk about, current modern horse sport, without the horse, human history would be completely different, right? So my husband, who is a lifelong learner and always reading things, and I never know where he gets this information, so I can't quote a source, but he read somewhere recently that the two greatest inventions of civilization, and greatest meaning most impactful, I don't think they're the greatest. One was gunpowder. The second was the stirrup. And so while we know that gunpowder gave us power and control over situations that otherwise, as one human or one group of humans, we couldn't do, um, there's a better word than greatness for gunpowder, but anyway,
right.
I mean. The stirrup, the place that allowed the rider to rest their weight of their legs so that they could sit on horses for lots of hours without being fatigued and without harming the horse too much from sitting too heavy on its back. That allowed for this whole trajectory in human civilization to travel further, to do more things, to transport goods. It's just absolutely amazing the impact that horses have had in human history. And that's all because they were gracious enough to let us use them in that way. They're a really incredible animal. In a lot of different ways. I talk a lot about Native American history with horses, which is still very much unknown because, as with a lot of things, that history has been covered up and quashed for political reasons. But a lot of Native Americans, their beginning interaction with horses was never for work. They lived side by side in these marginalized environments, and the horses were actually spiritual guides. That was it. That was their sole purpose. So when we think about that, all that's come before us and what we have access to with horses now, which have been bred and are capable of doing more than horses have ever been able to do before in sporting ways, that's the beauty in it. If you're going to use a horse for your own purposes, for your own pleasure, then you better make sure that you're grateful for this creature that allows you to do it. And that's so lost in a society where economics rule everything, where power and status is really at the root of equestrian sport. I'm just going to go out and say that, like, it just is. And it's not right, and it's not good for the long term, but it is. And until someone forces the equestrian world to think big and change the trajectory of the way that horses are being used and the way that equestrians are seen, it won't have the impact that it should have, because it's a beautiful partnership between horses and humans doing incredible things. But without that shift in mentality, it can't have the positive impact on the world that it should be doing.
You said, quote, "I didn't always love it here, but what has happened in my life here and in the places far away from here could never have happened. It could never have been without Memphis and its quirky, magical character. I don't think your hometown defines you necessarily, but when you let any place into your heart, you become a part of that place," unquote. I've always said, that in my opinion, there's way more good people here than bad people, and it's not even close.
Absolutely.
What do you love most about your life here with your family?
I love most about Memphis that we are so close to music that's changed the world. That's what I love. And I love hearing it on the radio, even when I'm, at my horse farm in Collierville. I love going to see live music. Shout out to my friend Kennard, who's going to be playing at the Highlander on Saturday, and he's previewing some of the songs that he's learned just for me. I had a really magical childhood in Memphis, not just because of my immediate family, but because of people that became extensions of my family and friends of my parents. My parents moved here in the late 60s, 1968, so they weren't native Memphians, and they really appreciated Memphis for what it was when they first moved here. And therefore, they met friends that also moved here because they were drawn to the city. And I spent a lot of my life in a blues club on Front Street downtown, and that absolutely has defined the person that I am. And I don't know how to explain it except to say that when you're around soulful people that are talented to make the kind of music that changed the whole trajectory of the world, it's a really powerful place to grow up. And I don't think I could see there's lots of places that I love to visit and other places that I would maybe like to live for a spell, but Memphis is home for me. It always will be.
I believe I read, is that club Blues Alley?
Yeah.
Where was that on Front Street?
Right on Front Street. So it's nearby to where the Memphis and May headquarters is now. It's just a couple of doorstops down. It was also a couple doors down from Prince Mongo's Planet, if you remember that club.
Yes, I do.
Yep. Mongo used to walk into Blues Alley with no shoes on all the time.
Of course. And he used to ride his bike around downtown with no shoes on all the time too. There was another club on called Lou's Place. I don't know if you remember Lou's.
That was Lou's Place. Was that's Paul and Marty Stavrin ran Blues Alley, and it was his brother Lou that had Lou's Place.
I love that place. I used to hang out in there. I remember going in there. I could still picture it. And they had a level. Then you went downstairs, and they had pool tables downstairs.
Oh,
and
so fun.
The Fabulous Thunderbirds were in town playing, and I was there at like 3 a.m. with a friend of mine downstairs shooting pool. And they walked in downstairs, and there was nobody else down there, and asked if they could play with us. And we like hung out with them for a couple of hours, and I was like, oh my God, it was just such a fun time. I had a great time there.
Amazing. Well, and the funny thing about the Savrin family is that they were French Canadians, and so they gravitated to Memphis because of the music and what they knew were gaps to be filled. Before Blues Alley came, that was long before Beale Street was resurrected. And before Blues Alley was there wasn't really a venue, a regular venue where the public could come and see blues performed live in Memphis on a regular basis.
Right.
And so this couple from they'd moved here from Washington State, and he a French Canadian, they came and helped recreate Memphis music for the public. It's like regular people do amazing things every day.
I love that quote. That's great.
And we have to remember that, especially when we feel a little bit down on ourselves or like we're nobody. I've said that in public before at a really important meeting in Aachen, Germany. I stood up in front of a group of people and said, I'm a nobody here, so I can actually say what none of you will say. And the CEO of the Aachen Horse Show, the most famous horse show in the world, stood up and looked me dead in the eye, and he said, "You are not a nobody." No, he didn't agree what I had to say, but that affirmation from him in that moment, even though it was a tense moment, was also life-changing for me, right?
Yeah.
And you realize if there's certain things in the world that you want to see get done, you better believe that you're enough to do it, because there might not be another person out there that has the combination of skills you have or desire to do it. It's going to have to be you.
You talked a little bit before about the spiritual side, and I believe Rev Rufus interviewed you about the spiritual side of horses, and you said, quote, "It has brought me a wonderful, authentic, wise, and supportive friend for life, Rev Rufus himself," unquote. Tell us about your message, the 5 truths horses teach us about our spiritual life.
Well, first of all, those 5 truths Rufus came up with. And it was interesting because we had a really long conversation at my farm, and I had no idea how he was going to frame this conversation that we had. But ironically, it was from an old riding school student of ours that happens to work for the church and knew about us. And he had interviewed someone previous to us to talk about horses, and he didn't get really what he needed from that interview. So then we were like, the follow-up to that. And I don't even remember what in the world I said in that interview, truly. Like, I won't remember what I said to you today either, probably. But in the beginning of the conversation, before the cameras were rolling, I said to Rufus, this is pretty amazing that I'm sitting to have a conversation with a spiritual leader. I love to talk about the spirituality of horses, but I'm not I wasn't grown up a religious person at all. And I've had a lot of reservations about religion and, the controlling and fear-based factors of religion for a long time. It's a part of my anthropological studies to wonder why religion and things like that. So I said, I'm just going to lay that on the line. And, let me tell you, I don't know any of the stories. I don't know any of the characters. I didn't read the Bible, but I'm here to tell you horses matter. They matter in the grand scheme of things. And he said, listen to me. I grew up in a juke joint too. And I didn't have a spiritual background or a religious background. Of course, there was spirituality because that's what music is. And that's what bars are for, is for people to get together and be real. And so from that moment in that conversation, I just knew that however he was going to put it together, it would absolutely resonate with me. And it did. It was beautiful. I went to see the last service at Hope, And it was overwhelmingly powerful when I saw that on the big screen with all the people. It was something.
The Southern Blues Equestrian Center, you and your husband, Christian's baby, you said, quote, "We can actually help with any discipline because the focus is horsemanship," unquote. Tell us a little bit about the place and what some of your main focuses there.
Sure. So our property is about 12 acres. We're seated in the reserve of Collierville. So we're in Shelby County and just a stone's throw from Mississippi. We have a very small private client base. Over the years, we've found that we really provide sort of a niche that is outside of what the more traditional stables do in our area or really anywhere. We like to provide training, education for riders. If they have a desire to compete, that's fine. We're happy to support them with that. But competition is never the main goal for us. Competition is a benchmark for how your training's going. Our goal is that you're learning about how to communicate with the horse and how to help the horse do the things that you want it to do for you. So we have a small private client base that is mostly adults. And then in addition to that, we have several folks in our general public riding school. But our main focus and what we want the main focus of our work to be from this point onward is providing this education to folks that otherwise might not have the opportunity to do it. And that has, I guess, really been what we always wanted to do. One of our mentors, who is an Olympic medalist from Holland and a very outspoken and very straightforward person, has cautioned us over the years that the things that we want to do will make us feel very alone, because it's not the current climate of the horse world to do the things and take the time that we do, and to insist on correctness and insist on ethics. But we can't do otherwise. So for a while, we were really alone in what we do, because not everybody wants the brand of horseback riding that we provide. Right. So you could either change to suit the market or find a market that suits you. And that's what we've done. And it's been in this last year, the opportunity to pilot this BridgeUp GiddyUp program has been everything and more that we always knew we wanted to do. We just didn't know exactly how it was going to be able to pan out for us.
How do you take someone like me? I've never been on a horse before. I think they're beautiful animals, but never been on a horse. Someone who maybe is a little bit intimidated to start, but wants to. How do you get them to the point where they're comfortable doing it?
So you start with meeting the horse and learning how to groom the horse, which is a very social interaction for the horses in their nature. So you're learning something that gets you around the horse and shows you how to safely interact with them. And in the same time, you're going to get a really good vibe back from the horse, because grooming is a pleasant activity for them. And I say to people all the time, again, talking about, the science of how we're starting to learn why things impact us positively or negatively. The horses have a heart field with a very strong magnetic resonance, and it's stretches and spans over quite a wide diameter. So no matter how much you think you're nervous or you think you're apprehensive, when you get in and just follow our protocol and you're around that calming influence of the horse, you're going to get there. Everybody does.
Quote, "I promise you, I've never been happier than being a part of this tiger family. This is what my life has been preparing me for, being adopted by the most wonderful family I could ever imagine. Love y'all, Coach Mac. Hashtag respect the Haven," unquote. You were speaking, of course, of the Havenview Middle School Tigers and their involvement with the BridgeUp GiddyUp pilot program that started last November. On the BridgeUp GiddyUp website, it says, quote, "Not only is horseback riding a fun sport and great exercise, but horseback riding can often help children to become more confident, responsible, empathetic, and goal-oriented. And the best part about the program, students who demonstrate exceptional work ethic, commitment, and talent may have the potential to compete in equestrian sport, all free of charge," unquote. Tell us a little bit about this really awesome and exciting program you guys have developed through School Seed Foundation.
Sure. So it was really an expansion of the urban equestrian program that was our brainchild back in 2013. We ran that program for about 5 years before we had to sunset it for lack of funding, really, and lack of bandwidth on our own part to do that in addition to all the other aspects of our business. So when a RFP, or request for proposal, came out from the Helen Gurley Brown Foundation about how can you the change the story about who gets to be an equestrian, I was like, me. I know how. And so we took all those things that we had learned from, and all of the things that worked well and didn't work well from our experience in the urban equestrian program, and then with the support of people like us behind us saying, we absolutely know that what you are saying matters. We know that we're not experts in horses, but we know that you're onto something big. We were able to sort of expand on it and offer physical fitness training, nutrition, education, and opportunities to try healthy foods, positive mindset sort of training, personal development, help with academics through reading for fun. It's a whole child program that I don't know anybody else in the world would have believed that I knew what I was doing, because I'm not an educator. I'm a horse trainer and an anthropologist, really. And this opportunity to provide what I know horses have done for me in my life in a very intentional, programmatic way. And this is the key: make sure that everyone that participates in the program is family and not just participants, because that's where programming always breaks down. When you want to do something charitable and it's still about us and them, just forget it and don't waste your time. Go spend your money, shop, or do whatever, and support your local economy, because if it's us and them, just forget it. It does not work. And sometimes it's worse than doesn't work. It makes things worse. So the fact that I have always loved my extended family in Whitehaven, and get the chance to officially be a part of what they do so well anyway, which is support each other as a community and work through really challenging things and stay positive. Like, it's like being welcomed in by your tribe. It's amazing.
Vincent McCaskill, president and CEO of School Seed Foundation, said, quote, "I am so thankful someone from outside of Memphis believed our kids deserve this exposure, that they are pumping 2.4 million and even more over the next few years in this program through School Seed Foundation. These kids are being exposed to something productive that will open their minds to other opportunities. We need more productive things for our children to do that will steer them towards opportunities," unquote. I love this, Mckrell. What you're doing for these children and the doors that it's opening for their future is incredible. I can't even imagine how good this makes you feel to be in charge of this and helping those kids.
It's amazing. And I say jokingly, but it's not really that joking, that it is such a privilege to work with kids every day, because that, what your whole show is about is reminding people to stay positive. Kids are so much closer to that natural state of being positive. As long as we, as grumpy, crotchety old folks, don't screw it up for them, they are so much closer to their natural state, natural human state, no matter what kind of background you grow up in. Of course, there's trauma and there's difficulties and there's terrible things in the world happening all the time. But children by nature are much more resilient. They are much more open, positive, vulnerable, all those things that we as adults have to work to be. They are, as much as I'm doing something for them, I hope it's positive, they do positive for me every single day that I'm with them. It is so refreshing to be with kids, and you do learn. Sometimes you think, why in the world do these school teachers even do it? I mean, the pay sucks, the hours are challenging, everyone is attacking you from all different sides, and you go, oh, because it's way better than working with grumpy old people. It's just, and it feeds your soul to be with children. It is amazing. Middle schoolers are my jam. Now we've got some kids that are in high school, because they were in 8th grade with us last year, and it's just magical to be with them.
And you're catching them at such a perfect age. I mean, they're so influenced at that age.
Yeah.
And, and I know this also has to give them a little bit of an escape from their lives, because we have no idea what's going on with them at home, in school, whatever it is. And this gives them a good escape and really makes an impact that way.
Well, and for me, horses, that was my escape too, and I didn't have a particularly challenging life, right? But everybody has challenges in their life, and everybody, sure, no matter what their situation is, has things that they need to escape from and expand their mind in ways that don't stress them too much. So yeah, it is really it's just amazing. And the sort of transformation, I always am careful, because the kids are amazing before they come to me. They're just amazing because they're amazing. And the fact that they've been drawn to horses sort of checks some boxes for some other things. Like children that are drawn to horses may be, missing acceptance in some more mainstream part of life, or they might be very empathetic by nature. They might lack a little bit of confidence, or they might not be overly aggressive, or whatever it is. These kind of personality aspects seek out horses. And the opportunity to see their superpowers bloom, just because I give them opportunity to be around horses and be on a farm and be with a big group of like-minded people, it's just amazing what they have developed themselves into in a year. It's incredible.
Less than 15% of the athletes in equestrian sports are people of color across the United States. And a few of the things that the students from Havenview Middle School have had them, they've had some really great things to say about the BridgeUp GiddyUp program. I just want to read a few of them. Quote, "The most exciting thing about riding has been learning how to canter myself. I'm excited for the very near future of jumping." That was Raven in 9th grade. Quote, "Riding helps me learn new things and it's a great workout." Marcavius, 7th grade. "My favorite part about riding is getting the horses ready, getting them clean and tacked up correctly." Jerome in 7th grade. "I just learned today that you can ride a horse without reins. Horses are the nicest animals I've ever seen." Emmanuel in 7th grade. And lastly, "With our fitness training, I've learned that if you cheat, you never get ahead." That's Madison in 8th grade. Those are just awesome to hear those things of these kids and what it's doing for them.
They're amazing. But like I said, the kids were amazing anyway. They just needed a vehicle to really show it off. That's all. That's all anybody needs, right? And the horses, they check the boxes in so many ways for so many people that they are a secret weapon.
Haven, you said, quote, "This dog is truly a gift from the universe." Tell the audience about Haven and who you said is her BDFF, best dog friend forever, foxy lady, of what they bring to your life.
So Haven is my 5th dog that we just recently acquired. It's been probably 3 or 4 months now. It's time flies. I can't remember.
Right.
But I was going to pick up one of my students from his home, and this little puppy was running in the road, and fat and slick and happy and healthy looking. And I said, "Lavaris, whose dog is that? Like, is it supposed to be out? Should we try to get it in for him?" And he goes, "I don't think it belongs to anybody. A couple of my friends feed it on their porch, but it doesn't belong to anybody." So I said, "Are you sure?" And then kept driving. Puppy's still in the road. Find a guy on the side of the road working on his car. And I said, "My friend here says that this puppy doesn't belong to anybody. Can you confirm that?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am. If you take her home, we'd all be really happy about it." So I thought, okay, here we go. My husband's either going to divorce me or he's going to love this dog too.
Right.
So Haven literally is the mascot for the BridgeUp GiddyUp program. She's our GiddyUp pup. She is clearly named in honor of Whitehaven,
Right.
which is a magical community and a huge community, right? We're talking about a big part of Memphis resides in Whitehaven, and it's a very powerful, very authentic community. That dog, to me, the fact that my husband did not divorce me, and she continues to be wonderful with the GiddyUp kids, with my own personal kids in our house, just reminds me that there are beautiful things every day where you least expect them to be found. And those beautiful things, if you let them in, enhance your life in ways every single day that it's what life is about, right? Relationship and seeing the beauty in things and seeing the opportunity in things. And Foxy Lady is a German Shepherd that I adopted from my one of my best friends in high school, Neely Bryan. She's now director of the West Point Animal Shelter in Mississippi. This was like a feral dog. And I said, it looks just like my old shepherd that died. And she goes, well, you're not going to be able to even get it out of the barrel. I just have to tell you, the dog is very scared. So that dog I've had for about 2 years now, and she's been a wonderful dog, but still very unsure of herself. And just bringing in this extra dog, which in theory you think, well, that's way more work. And now you're making your hard life even harder. She has been such a good friend for this dog that was still unsure of herself. So like the whole pack is harmonious, work is less, everybody's happy, they frolic around the house all morning, in the yard twice a day, and it's just fun. It's what it's about.
I talk about synchronicity and the power of a moment all the time. And where you were at that time in Whitehaven with that dog running across the street and playing in the street, you were supposed to be there. Absolutely. You were supposed to be the person that saved that dog, that rescued that dog. And look at all the great it's doing for you. And look at all the great it's doing for those kids being the mascot. I mean, and the same thing with Foxy Lady. I mean, being at that time at the shelter at that place in time, that dog was scared. And you said maybe still a little bit, but look now. I mean, with both of the dogs, it's just amazing. All that was supposed to happen the way it happened.
That's the adventure of life, right?
Right.
And it's so funny because in that time during the pandemic, when we weren't sure, we hadn't sort of been awarded the GiddyUp program or anything yet. And what I did in the meantime was work on a children's book for a friend of mine who's a genius scientist. I mean, he's world renowned and revered for being a ecologist, a biological ecologist in the West. And he had a scientific article that was very important, but very challenging to understand. And he asked me if I could turn it into a children's book. Well, it is a weird children's book, and it is long and it is involved. And thinking about how we fit with our universe and our immediate surroundings and really, all the things that we share the planet with, working on that book, which also rhymes for like 400 pages, that focus is, I know what helped bring this good into my life. I know it is. Right. Because I could have been spending my time worrying and frantically scurrying to try to make things happen. And instead, I learned that art of doing something that's pleasing and positive and letting things come to you, which is challenging sometimes for a person that has my kind of personality.
Absolutely. Your husband and partner of 13 years, Christian, you talked about, was born in Sweden. Tell us a little bit about him outside of equestrian and how you guys met.
Sure. So we were both at a continuing education seminar in Aachen for learning how to design show jumping courses. So it's a very technical skill, and it requires a lot of training and of course, equestrian knowledge more than just the technical skill of design. But when we met there, we really were, it was a setting where you're already talking about all the things that you love and why are you drawn to this thing, which is hard, and the pay isn't that great, and it's long, hot hours, and you're always in trouble. If somebody doesn't do well, you're the one at fault. Like, why are we all here? But it was a group of about 30 of us from something like 23 different countries that had assembled at this place to learn this skill and learn from the best in the world. So we were, that whole group of us that met over that period of like 10, 14 days were lifelong learners, obsessed with learning, obsessed with going new places, meeting new people, and trying new things. And that's exactly, my husband is the epitome of that. He loves to travel. He loves to experience new cultures, meet new people. Even though he's not nearly as talkative as I am in his own way, he's very sociable and enjoys that kind of interaction with people. So I think it was very clear early on that we were a perfect mesh. We shared all the same craziness, you know, that drives you forward, but we kind of filled in each other's gaps too.
Your son Karl once said to you, quote, "I was born by you. It's no wonder I'm so short," unquote. Your two boys, Karl and Johannes, I believe. Tell us about them, please.
Okay, so it's funny. I was just discussing them with someone else yesterday. Johannes is very unique. I would say, tends to have personality more towards my husband's. Karl is like my mini me. It's really a spitfire with his attitude about certain things. He is a consummate animal lover. Like, you go, "Karl, where are you?" He goes, "I'm petting all the dogs before I leave for today. Give me a break." Johannes is, they both love animals above all else. Neither one of them is particularly interested in riding for the sport of it. They love their ponies and they play around with it from time to time, but they love our farm. They love to take care of the goats and the dogs and the geese. And they're just really, really lucky to get to grow up on this farm, and they still get to have the Midtown experience because my parents still live at the house where I grew up on Peabody. And so they have the city life and the country life. And Johannes is obsessed with producing electronic dance music, although that might not be the right term. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that. Anyway, he's an electronic music producer, and both of them play the piano. And they're amazing kids, mostly because I allow them to run feral and I don't bother them too much.
What are the most important lessons that you've learned in life?
Oh, I think, well, balance is important. And I don't like to say patience because I'm not patient at all, really. But calmness, like while your mind is driving you forward to do the next big thing or the continuation or finish up a project, really enjoy the moment that you're in, and try to be happy and give a good vibration or frequency out into the world just all the time that you can, because this is a world of reverberations and frequencies, and it's just the way that energy works, right? So we're responsible for everything that comes into our world. We don't have control over everything, but we're responsible for exactly what happens to us, and we have way more control over that than we think.
Right.
That's a really important thing. And I say that as we're preparing next weekend. We have a really big spectacular happening with our children, get to show off the skills that they've been learning for a year. And in normal old Mckrell, like 43 years until now I'm 44, I've gotten a little wiser, would have been in frantic overdrive mode. It's all very organized, and instead of worrying about all the things that could go wrong, I'm enjoying imagining what all will go right. And just the fact that we even get to do it at all as a team together in a beautiful arena like Tunica, it, with wonderful friends that are coming from around the country to help us and befriend the children, equestrians, very accomplished equestrians coming in just to be backstage help. That's unheard of. Who
Right.
even thinks of that stuff? I don't even think I think of this stuff. I think I like download it somehow, and then I just have the capacity to make it happen. It's if you don't do that, you are missing the joy in life 100%, and you don't get it back. You don't get your time back.
That's right. How can people find and follow Southern Blues Equestrian Center and BridgeUp GiddyUp on social media?
Sure. So Southern Blues Equestrian Center is really easy to follow us on Facebook, and BridgeUp GiddyUp, probably the best place is to follow our Instagram page. We keep it really, really up to date because we want to be completely transparent about what the kids do, how they're progressing, the ups, the downs, the struggles, the successes. It's really important that on social media we don't just paint pictures of what we wish things were like. We paint pictures of things how they are and celebrate them. It's amazing to do that. So I think our Instagram page is really inspiring. Even if you're not a horse person, you'll enjoy it.
You started as an equestrian, at a young age and learned, from some of the best. And you and your husband have really come, in my opinion, full circle with what you're doing now with these kids and things like this. The BridgeUp, GiddyUp, should be going on all over the city and give
Yeah.
our children something exciting, positive and inspirational to look forward to every day. With people that truly care about them and their happiness and like all of you do. And I think that's a big thing that's missing, probably in many places, but I know it's missing in our city, getting into these communities and helping these kids and getting to them at a young, early age makes all the difference in the world. I love the story.
Thank
And I
you.
really appreciate you coming on today to share it. It's been really awesome.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.